Good morning, everybody. This is Edge of Right. I'm Matthew Thomas. I'm here with Joe Graves. Everybody knows. And
Hello.
Our special guest today is Michael Keene. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Mike is a leader and
Director.
A director, yes,
Executive
of Four Kids, which is a great program here in the Treasure Coast. Four Kids in the Treasure Coast, and it's a organization that is very dear to our hearts here at Graves Thomas. And so let me have him introduce himself, Mike, if you would.
Yeah, thanks. So Four Kids is a foster care agency, a nonprofit here in South Florida. So we have a regional office here in the Treasure Coast that I'm the executive director over. And then we also cover 13 counties in South Florida. So we have Palm Beach County, Broward County is our headquarters. We have a Miami-Dade office, and we also have an office in Southwest Florida. So we cover almost all of South Florida in the foster care space to be able to recruit, train, license, and support families to take in children in foster care.
That's awesome. So it's basically just getting kids with the right families and getting them into foster care.
Yeah.
And doing it in a wholesome and great way. I know when we recently had a banquet and that I attended, and it was amazing to see, one, how many great people came together to support the mission. But also just like, I was really blown away at like the passion that I saw that people were involved in Four Kids and the passion they had for putting, getting these kids into homes, like so that they can be great, additions to our society and be raised. It was really kind of like special. It was a really special thing to see.
It's eye-opening because you see a lot in the news of, especially right now, arrests because of drug addictions or things like that. And the children are typically represented in some of those news stories of like, hey, there was 3 children who were left at home alone while mom and dad XYZ. And everybody, has an emotional feeling when they see those stories and about, oh man, like what's like those children. I feel so bad for those children, but nobody thinks like, well, what's the next step for them? Where do they go from here? And most often they end up in foster care. And if there's no relatives that are suitable to take those children, then they'll look for licensed foster homes, which is what we do. And then, unfortunately, we're running up against a problem of not having enough foster homes for kids to come into. So then they end up either in group homes or shelter care, or even they're moved out of county, out of circuit, sometimes even out of state to be able to be placed into a home that can accept them.
Yeah, and Joe has some foster kids that he's adopted and are now a part of his family, and I think the same for you. I'm like, cause I remember when you were talking, Mike. I mean, how many foster kids have you had in your home?
So we've fostered over 14 that that I can remember. We have 9 kids, permanent children, 7 living at home right now. So, not all stories end up like mine. It's not, I don't want to scare anybody and say if you start to foster, you're going to end up with a million kids. That's our story and we love it. And it's amazing and it's challenging and it's beautiful. One home for one child is just as important because that one child is special and meaningful.
Yeah, it was cool to hear because it's not just like you're, up there just like a talking head. Like you're actually doing the work and you're really, doing it yourself. I thought that was really admirable. What do you think that the biggest misconception is for foster care? What's the biggest issue that people don't really fully appreciate or understand?
I think there's 2 sides of it. One has to do with the children. The other has to do with the qualifications to foster. So I think on the side of like thinking about foster care, because of media portrayal and kind of the history and what people assume about foster care, they ascribe a lot of challenges to the children that are coming into care which I'm not going to say isn't true, but when you think about and you understand the trauma that kids go through and how trauma actually rewires neurological pathways in the brain to put them into a fight or flight mode, a survival mode, you can understand why there's reactions to certain situations for children. They're not bad kids. They're children who have gone through extremely, extremely difficult situations, and their body has gone into a position where we need to survive. And that's why they have reactions to certain situations. But we've seen through understanding of trauma, through love and care and prayer and support from a loving community, that those reactions can actually be changed, and children can learn to love and thrive and feel secure and be attached. On the other side, there's a lot of misconceptions of what it takes to be a foster family. And now there are a lot of regulations that families are held to and standards are held to, but you can be a single mom in foster. You can be a single dad in foster. You can have a two parent working household in foster. So there's a lot of things that people will come up with to kind of give them an out to why they won't foster, which I love to hear those because I love to open up people's perspective. It's like, no, what we're looking for are loving homes. Like we have a shirt that we go all of our families that says say yes. Like that's what it is. We just want families who are willing to say yes to the hard thing and then take on the challenge, because these children are worth all that we have to give.
It's amazing because when Joe and his family, and it was like a cross cultural thing. So these young girls came in, and Johan as well, and they didn't speak any English, and it was, I mean, I was like terrified.
That was probably better.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like
it was
well,
probably
if you knew what they were saying about
English.
you. Yeah.
Well, they didn't say things that they later regretted, and they didn't hear us say things that we later regretted. So I think that, talking about misconceptions, I think in my own personal experience, I think we think about, I heard so many times, like, oh, these children are so blessed, to have you. And, it's an opportunity, but from, I don't know if you really look at it from the child's perspective and then speaking with them, seeing from their perspective, because they were sitting at home doing homework one night and then the police showed up and they removed them from their home and they never went back. And so, they're undergoing severe trauma. They're losing their biological connection, and that's all they know. I mean, right or wrong or whatever's happening in the home, that's who they know. That's their world. And you're uprooting them from that. And Columbia does it different. They have orphanages versus foster homes, but then they're sending them to this big institution with kids they don't know and all the ins and outs of dealing with, surviving and that type of setting. But it's terrifying. And, the girls will tell you now, like, they didn't trust any adults.
Right.
Because adults lie. Adults don't follow up. Adults don't follow through. So like with these children, it's very important to always be 100% honest with them. Sometimes as a parent, you may say, I won't get shoes. I'll take you later. You may not, maybe you don't go with a kid that's been through this trauma. If you're going to tell them you're going to do something, you need to do it. Mm-hmm. Because honesty and building that trust and building that relationship with the child is very important, but it's also difficult. And so for a while, they're just sitting back, this isn't going to work out. This is going to be like every other relationship I've ever had with people. It's not going to work out. So why should I try? You got to get past that period. I remember 3 months into the girls, I went out to the beach and I was just like, Lord, what have you gotten me into?
Yeah.
This is really extremely difficult. But then, it just was like a light switch. I remember having a conversation with Sophie and saying like, well, what do you got to lose? Just try. And it was like a light switch. Mm. And now the relationship I have with them is just unbelievable. And what they're doing is unbelievable. So I think it takes people that, especially in the foster situation where, it's kind of an intermediary process before they either go back to the home or to adopt a family. That's very difficult for a child, but all this stuff going on. And reason I love this organization, because when there's not enough homes in our area now, when all that is occurring, you're taking away from the biological family, the world, everything they know. Now, if they can't continue to live in this area and maintain their friendships, their schools, their teachers, you're taking them away from everything they know. And there was a movie, in Family.
Yep.
And we took the girls, but there was a really telling scene in that movie, and it had the kid, and it had like the pieces of yarn that were going for all the connections.
Yep.
And then how those just cut, and how isolating, in the mind of a child, how isolating and how terrifying. Like, who are these people? I don't know these people. And especially for our girls, like, they don't speak my language. They're not Colombian.
Yeah.
No, they don't are, and so that's why I really support 4Kids and the work they do. But I heard a statistic not too long ago. I just want to make sure that's still true, that if every church in our community had one family they supported for foster, we'd have enough room.
Yeah.
So to me, like, the church, like your mission, like, I would love to see churches support, because it's usually like younger families that have the energy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that want to have kids, but it becomes a financial constraint.
Right.
So my challenge out there, like, to the churches in our community would be like, lift up that family, one family out of each church that the church will help and support and lift up to provide a home. And then the problem's solved. These kids don't have to go out of community. They don't have to get, can you imagine how terrifying that would be? All of a sudden, like, you're on the other side of the state, like, trying to get into a new school in spite of everything else that's going on. Because, basically they leave with a bag.
Yeah. So when we started fostering, our first placement, our first, she's now our daughter. She's 19 now, which is crazy. I know it doesn't look like I have a 19-year-old, but I do. She came and she was removed in Port St. Lucie, and kind of part of her journey that I don't want to disclose too much, but she ended up with her brother in a residential facility up in Orlando, which is the closest place that they could be placed together until we opened up our home, and she could come back to this area. So what you're saying is exactly right. I mean, imagine being taken from the environment, even if the environment is unsafe, unstable. In the mind of the child, there's still that biological connection, that God ordained connection to your family. Even if it's unsafe, you still have that love and that connection. Not only that being taken, but the roads you're driving on now don't look familiar. The people you see don't look familiar. The smells you smell don't smell familiar, right? All of that is completely gone. And that we're talking about kids who are birth to age 17, like anywhere in that spectrum, right? And so you could have a 5-year-old who, I've got kids of all ages, but I can't imagine my 3-year-old and him being in an unfamiliar place.
It has to be terrifying.
Just for the mind of a child to have to go through that. And that's why, again, placing kids in the same community is so vitally important. And that's why we want to raise up foster homes in every county of the Treasure Coast so that we can place them here.
Yeah, because at that age, at the young age, they can't emotionally process what's happening. And, like with my kids, they're always interested about their biological parents and so forth. And we made the decision we weren't going to forbid contact.
Right.
But my advice to them was wait till you got to work on yourself first, and wait till you're emotionally strong enough to manage that relationship.
Yeah.
Because that connection is always going to be there. You're always going to, I think someone's always going to wonder about their biological parents and their siblings and stuff like that. So, cutting that off to me seemed like more of the yarn, being cut. So that's how we handle it. And I think had we not done that, they probably would have resented it, and it might have been, but we were open about it, and they've really, now they're 22 and 20 and about to be 23 and 21 and in college doing well. And they've really learned to manage it. But you're exactly right. When they first come, they have all these, barriers, survival mode. So they have all these walls they built around us. So what we do as humans to protect ourselves. And you have to be able to break those down. I can't imagine a 3-year-old going through all that, and how terrifying.
Yeah.
But that's why I just, I wish that we could find a solution to make sure these kids could stay here. Yeah. My girls at least had each other. They were sisters. So it helped them a lot.
Yeah. I mean, placing siblings together it's one of the most difficult things to do right now. Because siblings can come in pairs. There's been cases where a sibling group of 9 have come into care in this area. And if you think about what family is set up to take in 9 children, if you don't have it, like, you don't buy an 8-bedroom house if you don't have children, so some of those kinds of things are very difficult. But then what's a solution for that as well? Well, when we had a case come, there was 5 children removed. 2 of the olders were placed with us in our home, and the 3 younger siblings went to another foster home in the same county, in St. Lucie County. But we met up at the park, and we did, play dates, and tried to give that, to them to keep them together. But imagine the 2 olders who had primary caretaking roles for their 3 younger siblings now being separated from them, and the 3 younger siblings primarily being taken care of by their older siblings. Now they don't have that anymore. And it's like, man, so we did the best we could by keeping them at least together, and then bringing them together for, as often as we could with the other foster family. But it's not ideal. Now that's one of the stories that I love to share, because we didn't have the capacity, meaning like space and beds and things like that, to take the other 3 siblings in. But the other foster family ended up being able to make space in their home to welcome the 2 olders. So they eventually took all 5 together, and then that sibling group of 5 actually reunified with their mother, that is the goal of foster care. And you mentioned it earlier, like, foster care is not a permanent solution. Foster care is a temporary landing place for these children, so that we, as a community, the foster family, the courts, the case managers, hopefully our community together, can all come surround this family and help them get to a better place. Kids are going to be removed because of abuse, abandonment, neglect, but our community is not going to get better until we address the problems that are causing the abuse, abandonment, neglect, right? So if we want to find a permanent solution to foster care, it's getting to families and mentoring, discipling, bringing Jesus to them, so that these situations don't happen, right? I often say, like, I don't want to be a foster family, because I know that kids are coming into care because of these situations, but I do it because it's necessary. And I do it because I want to be able to be a loving, safe space for these children to land, but also get the opportunity to work with these families to help reunify them back together. And that's the whole point. I think a lot of people do also think a misconception about foster care is that foster parents just want more kids. That's either one of them, or they want to get paid for having kids, which is really, it makes me laugh. And some of these things, I'm fine with discussing and bringing up. And some of my responses, like, the government gives us an easier way to get money from them than taking in children. So if that was the whole goal for everything, it wouldn't be that. But it's not. The point of foster care is to work alongside the biological family to bring the family back together. Now, does that always happen? It doesn't. Is it the foster parent's responsibility to make that happen? It's not. It's actually the court's decision for the family to follow a case plan that's appointed by the court. And if the court deems them not following that case plan, that's handled all there. But our jobs as foster families is to continue to work alongside the biological family to help reunify them.
That's great. I think, the kids, I obviously, as someone who's, not that I've never adopted or been a foster parent. And, I think the kids, the value that they receive is like very evident, but I would have to imagine that there's true value for you guys as parents, because the sensitivity that it has to bring upon you to be patient, forgiving, like it's different because I mean, and I know how Joe's childhood was, but we had hardline fathers, you know what I mean? And so like, but I just think that I know seeing it firsthand that experience has made you a more gentle and patient person. Cause
I
I've seen
appreciate that.
No, I've seen it. And so I think that I think that's something interesting, that there's like a value to being a foster parent for the foster parent, because it actually makes you a more developed and like, I just more advanced person emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the sayings we say is that, we're not looking for perfect parents. We're looking for loving parents, right? Being a parent is one thing. And then stepping in to, raise a child that didn't biologically come from you and has different culture, different value, like that's a whole another level of parenting. And again, why 4Kids is so special is because we don't just say that the solution is to get a number of families in a particular area so that a child can go into a building, into a house. So what we do as a ministry is we are looking at how can we serve the entire child welfare community by providing training to our families, trauma-informed care training. So, all of our families go through a trauma-informed care training class, in addition to all the state classes that they do. And then each year they go through like a refresher course. We have therapists on staff at 4Kids that whenever a child comes in, we do intakes with the child. We get them services right away if they need it. We provide ongoing training to our families and help them to understand how to manage a household that looks very different than what a biological household would look like. Interactions with siblings, interactions with extended family, all that kind of stuff is things that people don't really think about. It's like, okay, foster child gets placed in your home. Your Saturday tradition as a family is to go over to your your parents, the grandparents' house, and you've got a whole family gathering. Well, now you've got a child coming in, and the child is very unaware of everything that's going on. I mean, it's a completely new family to them, right? And so what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about going into that so that doesn't trigger a child, so that behaviors and reactions don't come out, right? So it's teaching parents. We want parents to know how to approach those situations so that we don't have a big disruption with the child and end up having to move homes, not because the child is bad, but because they don't know how to handle another family's life.
That's so true. When we adopted, we went through All God's Children, and they had a pretty extensive training course that you had to go through. And I'm like, I've had 3 biological kids. I've been a parent. Like, what could it possibly teach me?
Right.
But I learned so much. I would have been a better parent to my biological kids had I adopted first or foster kid, because you learn things about communication with a child, getting down on their level. We talked about honesty and things of that nature. But the thing is they come into your family has a structure. So like, okay, 9:00, it's reasonable time to go to bed before school, but they don't have those kind of deadlines. So they were like, why am I being punished?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they feel. So adapting to your structure or a new family structure, which is what you're talking about, like that's a big deal. And that's a big change. And you have to work your way through that. It's not like, they instantly come and adapt your structure and all this stuff. You got to get through all these kind of barriers, and then eventually these walls start coming down. Yeah. But I think the training is really, really important. And then access to therapy, which we did with our children. And, I don't know what they talked about because it's all confidential.
Right.
And that's the way it should be, in my view. But they had things to get off their chest. They had things that they needed to talk about and work through. It's a big change. And, it really worked out well with them. Such good kids, and you're just unlocking that potential.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with kids, they can, you could be the next Einstein.
Yeah.
These kids have potential and value that can contribute into society. So this whole purpose, of supporting them and helping them get through, because it's a very vulnerable time.
Yeah.
If your kids don't have this kind of love and support, they can end up in a bad way.
Right.
So again, I admire, what you're doing. And I don't mean to scare anybody. Like if, it was hard work, but I would tell you it's the biggest blessing that I've experienced in my life.
Yeah.
Like it's so rewarding when you start seeing the change and the adoption and these children growing.
Mm-hmm.
We've also done some work over like Hibiscus House and we've seen, kids that like had to remove themselves from their home because they realized, there were kids over there with like 4.0 GPAs.
Right.
That just like my parents, they're doing drugs or whatever. So all this stuff, like these kids need to be supported and encouraged and then unlock that potential, and it won't happen in every case, but those that do, it just is so satisfying. It must be satisfying for you to see these kids grow up and then.
Yeah. I mean, it's to see the change that a child goes through when they're in an environment that's loving and safe and stable. I'll share a story. We had a child, a young girl. She came into care. She actually had bondage marks on her wrists and her ankles. This is happening right here. Like this is in our community. This isn't, another country or anything. This is happening here. She came into our office. We have a therapy room in our office, and no eye contact. You could tell she's very alert of everybody that's in the room, particularly males. And she got into therapy, and I mean, just months and months and months of work and love from her family, until 6 months later she comes in, and when she walks into the room, she actually brings light. Like she brings joy. And it's because those walls came down because she knew that she was in a place that was safe. Like that's the kind of results that these children deserve, and they're not going to get unless we step up and do our parts, right? And we don't want to scare people away from fostering. I mean, I can be kind of an intense person on this because I also don't want you to think that it's not scary and hard. Because if you get into fostering and you think it's going to be easy, you're not going to last.
That's true.
I mean, you will have people in your house, and not just children, but like adults in your house all the time checking up on you. It feels like your life's under a microscope because it kind of is, and rightfully so, because these are children that are not yours in the custody of the state. They need to make sure that they're safe. So you have to have thick skin. You have to be able to endure a lot of pressure to go through it. But again, it's like, why are you doing this? And that's one of the things we ask our families. It's like at the very beginning, it's why are you fostering? And they'll give us their answer, and we'll say, you need to write it down and you need to remember it and you need to say it all the time, because you're going to get to a point, I promise you.
You're going to have those beach moments
where you're going to be like, what in the world?
What have I got myself in?
And one of the things we don't want to do is break apart another biological family, meaning the foster family, because they weren't prepared and equipped to go through it.
Yeah.
Right. So, I have some friends and pastor friends up in North Florida who don't, the system isn't set up quite like ours is here. And they're like, Michael, how are you supporting your foster and adoptive families? Because we have couples in our office right now talking about divorce, and really the issue is surrounding foster care and adoption. And we can kind of do the thing and point like, well, it's not because they fostered, there's underlying issues, but like, again, there has to be that stability within the family. And what we don't want to do is place a child in a home that then disrupts that home. Not only does the child have to leave and have a disruption in their placement again and go somewhere new, but now what is going on with that family? So that's big in my heart, because like for me, when you have breakdown of families, you have the breakdown of society. like if you look historically at the demise of any culture's civilization, it's when we start breaking down the family and then going into this like ultra individualistic mindset, right? It's me pleasing me, all that kind of stuff. So we have to bring families together and get them back together for our culture, for our society to continue to grow and improve.
Yeah, I think that's, again, where the training comes in, because, I'm think discouraging, but people need to be aware and eyes wide open. And, if it's going into a home where there's a marriage relationship, the marriage needs to be strong.
Exactly.
And, it's not easy, but it is so rewarding. It's such a rewarding and spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
To help these kids. I remember, when the way it is in Colombia, you got to go through all the immigration stuff. So it takes like a year. So we get there, and then you go into country, and you stay there like a month. And, but as soon as you get there, they take you to the orphanage. The kids go with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the state's not coming to check on it. It's like this little, okay, here are the kids. And, but I remember like we were having dinner, and I was so excited, and I was like, Sophie, and, we're a family now. And Sophie's like, just hold on, settle down. And my heart sunk.
Yeah.
It was like the first realization, like this wasn't going to be like, it's not an instant bonding situation. And then I had to go back to my training, and they tell you all the possible, I think we got the best possible outcome we could have with the girls. I think that it's everything that I ever thought or hoped it would be. But it's not like that in every case. And, you go through those times where you're wondering. And, the thing is, I think, I lost a son. My wife and I were going through a grief process too. But they're going through a grief process. Yeah. And I think that the biggest thing I learned about understanding grief, which is really a human emotion that most of us don't have experience with because it happens under extreme circumstances. But these kids have been subjected to trauma and they're grieving. And, the best way that was explained to me, was like, it's an individual experience. And, it's like a train, and sometimes the train's moving forward and sometimes it's moving back. And when you're experiencing, maybe, you're never on the same page. It's like everybody experiences differently. And I think that really helped me understand the girls and what they were going through with their grief process. Colombia tries to reunite with the family, but the father went to jail. The mom terminated her parental rights. Then, basically, Colombia doesn't really, there's only like maybe 100 adoptions a year in Colombia. They try to reunite them with the Colombian family, and then when they don't, and they had been through all that, and then they went through a failed adoption. So that's where we felt our calling.
Yeah.
As older parents, like, where do we fit in this? There's people in line for babies, but and I think, whether it's foster care or adoptive parents, you really need to what is your calling?
Yeah.
Because I think it is a calling. I think it's something that God lays on our heart. I think it's what we're commanded to do by scripture. But I think that, developing what is my calling, and what is it, my understanding of my role in this child's life, and it's to say that people do it for the money.
I didn't even know that was.
It's a ridiculous.
That sounds like not a good decision if you're doing that.
I mean, you're making pennies an hour compared to what you're undergoing and what you're. But again, I don't want to scare people, but you got to just understand the situation and what it is that you're dealing with, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to work through it.
Right. And unfortunately, those kinds of misconceptions are out there because there is a history of abuse of the foster care system. I mean, and that's something, again, that when we talk about foster care, and even if I'm talking with somebody just in public for whatever reason, and they ask what I do and I kind of explain to them, everybody has some sort of opinion about foster care, but you will run into a lot of people who have actually had an experience in foster care. And what I found that is that people who either are my age or older who have had a run in foster care, it's always been negative. I was at I was at the barber and I was talking to the guy cutting my hair, and he was asking me what I do and all that kind of stuff. So I was telling him, and he said, "Oh, I was in foster care." And I said, "Well, what was your experience like?" And he's like, "It was really bad. I was abused by my foster parents." And he's got kind of like the straight edge, and he's doing all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, "Oh man, like he's got this thing real close to my neck," and so I started talking with him. I was like, I like. One, like I'm so sorry that's your experience. Like, and what we want to do as an agency, as a ministry, is completely redefine that for children. If children are going to have to go into foster care, we want that experience for them to be something that changes their life, not ruins it. And that goes into why we do what we do as an organization, and why we put so much effort and so much time and so much resources into our families that we license and the children that come in, is because we want to make a better life for them and with them, and not have the experience, because if they don't come into one of our families, they're going to go somewhere else, right? And there's a ton of amazing child placing agencies out there, but you do also run into families that don't have the right motives for this. And we hear it all the time. Most of what you see in the news is about stuff like this. there's something just came out in Fort Pierce over the last couple of days about this very thing.
Yes.
And that's why we're so passionate about it, is because we know what could happen if they get into if they go from one bad situation to another bad situation, and that breaks our hearts. So, when people come with these kind of accusations of like, foster parents or child snatchers, or, which is, what it is, or these kinds of things, right? It's because they've either had an experience or heard about an experience that is very valid. And we want to redefine that for the community.
Anytime the state is involved in anything, there's probably, I think, like room for improvement.
Absolutely.
And I do think that I get why like this state is like a necessary component to foster care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if just because of your experience, I mean, what is something that you see that you think that there's like room for improvement, or like you'd like to see a change? Like, is it like more hands-on? Is it more like what's I don't know.
Yeah. So the state of Florida has actually done a really great job of improving the child welfare system. Back when we started 4Kids in 1997, we were one of the lowest graded child welfare systems in the country, the state of Florida. We transitioned to a model called community-based care, which is really trying to localize child welfare as much as possible. So we have the Florida Department of Children and Families, which is the state agency that sets standards and regulations and kind of oversees child welfare as the entire state. But the department will contract out to privatized agencies in each circuit to handle the local child welfare system in their area. And then with the contract money that those private agencies get, they have the opportunity to buy goods and services to be able to improve child welfare here. So like for us, we're like the subcontractor of a contractor. So the lead agency, which is a private agency that's responsible for child welfare in Circuit 19, Treasure Coast, is Communities Connected for Kids. And they will contract with licensing agencies like 4Kids, Camelot, Cayuga, and they will rely on us to do the recruiting, training, licensing, and support of the foster family, which gives their case managers and their agency the resources available to invest in other things, prevention services, things like that. So we were in 1997, the state of Florida was really bad. We switched to this model. And when you can localize and bring the solution down to the very communities, that's when the most and best work happens. And that's what we've seen is the more that you can get the community to understand that this is a community problem and the solution is the community, not the state, then it's going to work really well. So we're really appreciative of this model. It really is conducive to the best outcomes possible. The areas for improvement, we would love to see things happen faster. There is an expediency to the permanency of a child. But I mean, when you get involved in the court system, when you have things that have to go through multiple layers of approval, and it just, the weight happens. So there's a lot. And again, I'm not going to say it's all necessary, but there's a good reason why there's so many layers of things, because this is the life of a minor child that needs to be protected at all cost. So that's one of the hardest things for foster families and foster families who have the ability to adopt, is that waiting period. It's like, how much longer, how much longer, how much longer? It's like, it's worth the wait, right? So, if you're fostering and you're getting ready to reunify the child with the biological family, and a hiccup happens, or, like a family member relapses or something happens, which like prolongs the system, it's like, man, we want to rush all these things. But if we understand that, like, man, I'm not saying that a long period of time is good, but if we have a longer period of time, just know you have more opportunity for impact in the child. So what would I say that we could improve? I would love to see things go through the court system faster. Is there a solution for that? I don't know.
Yeah, we're looking for one in our business every day.
I'm sure you guys are feeling some of the same stuff.
Yeah, but that's for you guys. I couldn't even imagine like undertaking foster care or adoption without having someone like you to like speak to. So I would just say that, like, you guys even being voices of like an advocates or someone that's like just been through the course before, you know what I mean? It's just really cool, because it probably brings a lot of peace and like comfort to the people that are new to the system,
I think encouraging families is important. And I do think that, as a family, it's helpful to talk to other people and their experiences and realize, like, yeah, everybody goes through this.
Yeah, you can get through it. Yeah.
But I just to touch on a few things, I think oversight's obviously very important. I'm sure foster families go through background checks and all that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, nothing fires us up more than children that get victimized, which we've had, unfortunately, cases, but, no institution is going to be perfect. And I think we're seeing in this day and age that, abuse of children is, I hate to say it's widespread, but it's a lot more than I ever imagined, the stuff that I see. And it's a terrible thing, but I don't think you can judge a system, just like you can't judge lawyers, you can't judge preachers, you can't judge any industry or by isolated cases, because as human beings that get involved in these things, there's going to be things that happen.
Yeah.
And I would say the vast majority, overwhelming majority of people that get into foster care are doing it because they feel a calling and it's the right thing to do and they have the right motives. And unfortunately, we see something in the news like we saw recently out of Fort Pierce, and, it creates these beliefs or stigmas that people have. And I don't think that they're justified, because there's people like you and your organization, and we've been involved with you guys for a long time. They're really doing good work, the hard work. And again, just like our churches, I would just challenge our churches to support one single family from their congregation, because it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Financially and emotionally and all that. But if every single church, like if churches, Christ came to have impact, right? And as churches should have impact. This is one thing that can be done that can have immediate impact on our community. And that's these children having a safe place. Because if they don't, it just leads to bad things in bad places. So,
is that trajectory for a child's life? I mean, if you think about how like powerful that is,
it's amazing.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
It's like to see someone who, like your barber, who like just can put it all together, or goes through like a terrible situation and they come out and they're just like evolved. And I think that putting these kids into good homes and like having your touch on their lives to be able to help push them to be like a productive adult. I mean, it literally is, from an outsider's perspective, like that's like one of the greatest things that someone could do. I mean, truly, like you're taking someone who, their outlook in life is, a negative, and they don't trust and they don't love and they're closed off, and they're saying, I don't even have a purpose for being here. I don't even like this existence, this reality. And then to take that person and help show them like love and caring and acceptance and trust. And then they come out and now they're a productive member of society and they're giving back. I mean, it's like, what? That to me is super admirable. And it's a real blessing. Like, I think it's really cool that you guys have been able to do that.
I can just say with the girls,
It's awesome.
like, it's a day by day existence. They don't have dreams or hopes or plans for careers. They're just surviving each day, getting through each day. And now they'll say, like, I never imagined, like, I'm driving.
Yeah.
I'm going to college.
Yeah.
Right.
And just things that, and it's being able to give them hope that there is a future, there is a path, because in a lot of these situations, I'm sure it's the same, domestically, they don't have that. And the people that are around them may not have that. And, I think the domestic, we looked at domestic adoption at first, but they kind of scared us, and, basically they're going to lie, they're going to cheat, they're going to steal.
Yeah.
And like, well, I don't want that, but it's not really accurate. And I think that people that get involved and like represent the system as that, these kids, they're in survival mode.
Yeah.
So if you don't know where your next meal's coming from, you have food insecurity, or like you don't have shoes, or you can't provide for yourself, or mom and dad are involved in something where you're neglected and basic care is not provided. Like, think about from their perspective, what are you going to do? I mean, as humans, we're programmed to survive. What are you going to do to survive? And so, yeah, there might be some things that you might have to overcome, but it's safe, secure.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a meal. I don't have to worry about, loading up or taking food, or I know that I'm going to have 3 meals a day or whatever it is. I know that, like, I have clothes to wear. I know that my dad isn't going to beat me. I remember one of my girls, they hung their laundry out and it fell on the ground. The mom beat her.
Yeah.
She had nothing to do with it. So for no reason in her mind, like that parent that these kids that are subjected to things, like, think about like trying to understand that as a child,
Right.
that my mom or dad at any given time for something that I didn't even do, that could be subjected to things like that. And I think that, a lot of the behaviors that you see, it helps you understand them. And I think with therapy and help and understanding and security, that this stuff can be overcome. I know it can be, because I've seen it. But I think, preparing for the role, like, is really, like you said, important, and then support the family through the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what, I mean, again, our outlook on how we do foster care is exactly that. So, we are a Christian ministry, so we recruit from churches. So if you're a church that's watching this, get in touch with us. This is what
Please.
our mission is to recruit Christian families. And we work with the church to build a support system for that family. We call it FAM, Family Advocacy Ministry. So we've got the system down. Are we perfect? No. Are there flaws? Absolutely. Are there things that in 4 kids that I wish, and we're working on improving? 100%. But it doesn't matter if we have the perfect system and no families, right? So like that's our biggest need. Our biggest need is families. I mean, I was just reading a report right before I came in. There was a 4-month-old that we weren't able to place in one of our homes. I mean, 4 months old. And before that, we had I think she was 2, had to be placed into shelter care because there wasn't enough homes. So, like, what's the biggest need? The biggest need is for families.
So sad.
And it is. And we love, you mentioned hibiscus. I mean, it's like we love them and glad that they're a safe place and a stable place for the children to land. But one of our staff, he partners with Youth for Christ and does kind of like a mentorship program or Bible study at Hibiscus. And he was telling me that one of the teenagers he was talking with was like, I just want a home,
Oh.
and that's like, can we not be a community of believers that just says we're going to provide a home for every child? Like that's our vision statement at 4Kids, a home for every child, and it's like, isn't that the most basic thing that we as a community can provide?
Right.
If we can't just provide a home for every child, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just see, money being spent on this, that, and the other. And it seems like,
It's like we
taking
lost the plot.
care
Yeah.
of children should be the priority, like, you know what I'm saying? And the thing that kind of gets me that's a little bit inconsistent with a lot of, conservative thinking is, we talk about pro-life, but that's more than just the unborn child. It's,
Right.
Foster kids. It's supporting these kids in adoption and, understanding that they're 4-month-old babies that need a home. I mean, that's heartbreaking. That I almost got tears in my eyes. You're talking about the girl with the marks on the arm,
Mm-hmm.
but being able to see that, 6 months later, that personality came out, like that true inner, I have a daughter like that lights up the room. I know what you're talking about. Just a child that just lights up the room when they come, and to see that was suppressed and see that come out, like how rewarding that is. But, as a faith-based community, like, it's scriptural. I mean, commanded to do these things, and we get so wrapped up in everyday things that in the eternal matters, it's inconsequential. But these children, their souls, they're loved by God as much as we're loved. And so, I think that I hope some churches are watching this, and that I'd love to see a program be developed where, because to me, it's like younger families or younger people that may not have had children yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're really well equipped, but it may be a financial, you see that?
So that's one of the questions that we get a lot is like, what financial support? And so I'll talk kind of on the dad side, right? Because a lot of the stories that we hear is, the wife is wanting to pursue this, and then the husband has the concerns that I think many husbands have and should have, rightfully so. It's like, well, one, how do I protect my family? Because they kind of all the issues that we've already talked about, right?
Yeah.
But also, how am I going to ensure that we can provide financially? So when children come into care, they do come with Medicaid and so the health insurance thing is not a thing, but children are also, there's a monthly stipend that is given to the foster family. And let me be clear, it's not a paycheck. And if you have children, the stipend that you get, does not cover what a child costs, right?
Yeah.
One baseball through the window is like 2x that stipend, for the month. And, that happens. And so the financial concerns are there, but if we always let financial concerns drive our decisions, and I struggle, this was part of my story, right? It's like, I have to step out in faith and believe that God is going to provide if I'm obedient and say yes to his calling. So, I mean, my testimony is that, I mean, my life from when we started fostering in 2017 through now has just been like, if you looked back on my life, I mean, you would really be like, dude, there's no way you did this by yourself. And I'm like, well, yeah, like I absolutely did not. So we started fostering when our firstborn son was 1.5 years. we had our daughter come to us, and 2 months later, my wife gave birth to our second child. So, we started fostering when she was 7.5, 8 months pregnant. So we went from one child to three children in the span of 2 months, one of them being a 10-year-old. And we were 23, 24 at the time, which is crazy. And then, so that filled the house that we were living in. But we felt this burden of like, man, there's still children that need homes. There's still children that need homes. And we were, there's a population of kids that come into care as well that have medical complexities, which a lot of people don't know, that children are, there's infants living in hospitals because they have medical complexities that they can't be discharged from unless there's a medically licensed foster home. So we ended up doing that. We ended up becoming a medically licensed foster family. And we wanted to serve more. And really it was like, well, we don't have the space to do it. So what's the solution? And it's like, well, we're going to try to find a bigger house. So we started looking for a bigger house. One, became available. There was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock that seemed to happen when we were pursuing this house. But when my mother-in-law, who's a realtor, when she took us to go see the house, I walked through the threshold of the front door, and the Lord told me, "This is your house." And I'm like, "Let's go. That's it." And then he goes, "And I'm going to fill it." And I'm like, whoa, there's like 3 extra bedrooms in this house though. Like, what do you mean? And so then we move, and there's a whole story behind that of like, different bids going in on the house, and ours got accepted even though it was the lowest one, and all this stuff. Like, but it's just God providing. Until we get to the point where we've got 9 children, 6 adopted out of foster care. All of our adopted children have medical complexities to a degree. And I mean, we've gone through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows of foster care, where we adopted, we took in twins. They were born at 25-week, drug exposed, all sorts of stuff. His name, I'm going to refrain from his name, but one of the twins at 18 months old ended up passing away from medical complications, but we got to adopt him. And like that, that's one of the things where it's like, I didn't want to put, as a husband, as a father, as a protector, I didn't want to put my family through that. But to think that I would be so selfish to try to not let myself go through the pain and suffering and not give a home, a permanency to a child that I love dearly. It's like, we have to let our hearts break so that theirs can heal. Like that's a common thing that we say in our house, and that we say in the fostering community. It's like, we will get attached, we will get hurt, but like being able to be a healing space for this child is so much more important. And it's so much more valuable. So we're going to allow ourselves. I mean, that's what Christ did for us. Christ died for us so that we could become in relationship with the Father. And that's what we want to represent to these kids too.
Have you done research about the financial commitment, like per child or ages of child? Or
yeah. So this was back in probably 2022. So I'm sure it's gone way up from there. But it cost the state about $20,000 per year per child in foster care. Like that's the financial commitment for like cost of the state to care for the child welfare system. We as a ministry, as a nonprofit,
so the state provides $20,000?
No, like the total cost to care for one child in foster care for 1 year is about $20,000 now.
Okay, that's a study done by
right. So we want to help unburden that cost from the state so that they can dump resources into things that are going to be valuable. And we want to bring the community in to be able to help fund some of this stuff. So as an organization, we're about 65% privately funded. And I would love to get 100% privately funded, because I don't want to have to depend on an administration or how somebody feels 1 year for an appropriation or a dollar amount, something like that. But when I first came on staff, and I'm super intense when it comes to this. So I was like, everybody's called to foster until every child has all this kind of stuff. I was really dogging people, man. until I, I kind of grew up. And, but we realize and recognize that not everybody's called to foster, but we believe that everybody's called to do something. Serving, volunteering, donating financially, like whatever it is, because this is not a problem that is separated from each of us. Foster care is the ground zero for incarceration rates, for sex trafficking, for homelessness. Like it has a foundation in foster care. And if we can change that, if we can break the cycles of generational abuse and things like that, we can change our society. We can change our community. And it's not just a social change. It's a change that's going to be kingdom focused.
So if a church, we talked about them supporting a family, what would that look like? What would the financial commitment be to basically lift up a family to be able to foster?
Yeah. So conservatively, it costs us about $5,000 just to recruit, train, and license one new family. Support for a family year after year. We're talking more just because of therapists and things like that. But the minimum, if somebody asks like, what dollar amount would make an impact? Well, really any dollar amount would make an impact, but conservatively $5,000 would allow us to license one new family this year. So what churches can do, again, churches can partner with us in many ways, but the most helpful thing that a church can do in partnership with us is raise up a foster family that we license, but then surround them with support in their people, cooking meals, doing can you imagine how much laundry I have in my house?
No.
It's ridiculous.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm
it's
sure.
Crazy. So,
every day, right?
So yeah, multiple times a day. So it's like, and not that we actually do it. It kind of, but having people go over and be, helpers at the home and cutting the grass and things like doing things for the foster family that takes the load off of them so that they can focus on what they're called to do.
Yeah, so
that's the biggest help. We as a ministry, what's really important for me is making sure that we don't step into the space that the church is supposed to be in. So we want to do the things that the church can't do, which is the licensing and training of the foster family. But we want to empower the church to be able to support the people that are already there because it's their own community. Yeah. They've already built that. So we come alongside them to be able to do that.
Financial support, help cover the costs of the child.
Right. Exactly.
If someone wanted to, get in touch or do more, like where do they go? Where do they, a website?
Yeah. 4kids.us, just the numerical 4kids.us. That's our global website page. They can find all the information about us. There's programs and things that we have down in South Florida, Broward County and Palm Beach that we don't have up here yet. Independent living, transitional living,
transitional living. You talk about from once they reach age of majority to adult.
Right.
That's so important.
Yeah. So we have programs down there. We have, like I said, we have formulas and programs down there that we would love to be able to bring up here whenever the time is right and whenever the need is there for us to fill. But if they go to 4kids.us, they can find out all about us. If they, I don't know if they can find my contact information on the website anywhere, but our office number is there. But I would just love to have a conversation with somebody. Like we'll go out to coffee, we'll go out to lunch or whatever. Like I want to have a conversation, even if it's not about what are the next step in fostering. Like awareness is such a big thing because if we can ingrain the mindset of child welfare into like the culture and get people to understand that just like affordable housing, everybody knows about and everybody wants to do something about. If we can do this with child welfare, we're going to see a significant impact.
It's awesome.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming here today. Your ministry with us, and you got a good heart.
Oh, you can tell. You got very high vibrations, my man.
That's good.
And I really hope this conversation is like, I was just thinking, like, if it in any way, like, just helps someone take a step or like even having more of like appreciation and understanding of what like value can come out of this. Mm-hmm. Then it was, it's good work. It was great work. And so it was a really cool conversation.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's been fun.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Until next time. Thank you.